Welcome back to Project 78. This is Mark with the channel. Today we're going to be replacing the power steering pump in the 78 Cutlass. After installing the intake manifold gaskets, we took the car out for a drive. Upon pulling it back in and opening the hood, found out that there's some leaking fluid coming from the shaft seal of the power steering pump. Part of this job is going to involve pulling the pulley off of the shaft of the power steering pump. So I'll be taking you through the process on how to do that, and along with a full removal and installation of the pump itself. The instructions that came with the pump are giving me 3 hours to accomplish this project, and I must be at least a skill level B mechanic. So let's see how we do. Let's get into it. First thing we're doing, we're going to loosen up this bolt, and this one, and that should allow the pump to swing, and we'll be able to remove this belt. Okay, we should be able to push that pump in and pull this belt off. And we're just going to leave it hanging on the lower pulley because they can't come off anyway. Okay, now we're going to remove those 3 bolts that I just showed you, and I'm going to flop the pump forward, and that's going to give us access to the fittings behind the pump there. Okay, now with the pump detached and laying forward here, you can see a high pressure line here, which is your threaded one, and your low pressure return line from the steering box is this one here coming off the tube. So we're going to get a wrench, take this off. I'm going to get a small container here because when you take these off, obviously you're going to get fluid out of them. Okay, now that we have the pump flopped over forward here and we have our drain bucket, we're going to crack our flare nut loose here. This is a 5/8, and if you do have a flare nut wrench, definitely useful. All right. Okay, now while that's draining out, I'll get the other one taken off, the low pressure side. All right, there we go. All right, we're gonna let everything drain here. Okay, I think we got most of the fluid out of here. We're going to take this pump up to the bench, and we are going to attempt to pull the pulley off this thing. Old pump is on the bench and in the vise, and we're going to attempt to pull this pulley off. And I do have a pull kit made by OEM Tools. This is from Amazon, part number 37031. Okay, this part here, when you take this off, this is your sleeve that fits over your collar here, and this is what wraps around the pulley. So one side is a little bit more narrow, I guess, and I think that's because this is a universal, whatever side adapts and fits to your application, that's what you're going to use. So I'm going to go this way with it. So this goes on here like that, and that attaches to your groove. And then this bolt here, the center is going to push against the shaft there. So what we got to do is back this all the way in, and then we'll encapsulate the whole thing. Okay, and this is where our sleeve is going to come into play. That keeps everything together. Okay, a lot of guys use an impact here, and I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm going to use a regular 1/2-inch ratchet with a socket and a wrench to help pull this off. I felt it just break loose there. There it is. Just caught it. All right, success. Perfect. Another thing to note here, guys, once you have this off, just check the groove here. You're inherently going to get power steering fluid everywhere when you're doing this. So I just took a paper towel and just clean out that V in the pulley because you don't want your belt slipping. Okay, now with the pulley off, we have access to these bolts for the bracket. We're going to take these 3 bolts out and remove the bracket from the pump. And this is me driving to AutoZone because I ordered the wrong pump. Okay, this definitely looks like the correct pump. There are some minor differences on it, which I'll show you. This one here, this is the one that came off the car. If you look at the bolt pattern of how it mounts on the bracket, you can see how the whole pump is kind of turned, almost at a 45-degree angle. Now the pump that I got originally had this aligned straight up and down. This notch here was straight up and down, so all your mounting holes were off. So the whole pump assembly itself was rotated about 45 degrees. And obviously it would not mount with the existing brackets that I have, so that's why I had to return it and get the correct pump. So now the minor difference that I see here, and I could not find another pump that had the low pressure side come out like this. I don't know how many different styles they had of the reservoir, but I could not seem to find another one like it, because if you'll notice, this one here kind of comes out the center. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. We'll just have to reroute that low pressure side hose. Shouldn't be an issue. Just something I wanted to note and make you guys aware of when you're looking at these pumps. At this point, we're going to reverse procedure, and we're going to get this bracket bolted back on. Okay, the pulley is ready to go on. So basically what we have is out of the kit here, there's a 3/8 rod that's going to thread right into your shaft. And you can imagine what's going to happen next. Your pulley will be here, and there's a thrust bearing inside here that makes it easier to spin when you're turning this nut to press the pulley on. You want to make sure you're using all the threads on that 3/8. Go as deep as you can into that shaft. We're going to eyeball that straight. Okay, seems to be going on there pretty well. I don't feel any binding. On the old setup, the front of the pulley was flush with the pump shaft. So I'm going to go a little bit more and then check it, because I don't want to overdo it either. Okay, so it felt like, I think, kind of felt like it didn't want to go any further. Yeah, that's all the way. Let me take this off. Yep, perfect. It's right where she was. Okay, this whole assembly is ready to go back into its rightful place. So we're going to go ahead and get this bolted in. This job just turned into something I did not want it to. What we're looking at here is the actual pump. I had to use the reservoir. I separated the pump from the reservoir. This is the old one. So the return tube on this one, the new one, it hits the engine block and it just will not work. I tried bending it a little bit to see if I could get it to fit, but it's not going to work. So now I'm left with, I'm just going to change out the reservoir, put the new pump into the old reservoir, and then finally we'll get this back installed again. A couple things I wanted to point out here. I've never had one of these pumps out of the reservoir, so this is the first time I'm seeing this. But if you notice here, there's a magnet here which catches all your metals. Any shavings that are in there, everything should collect on that magnet. I looked at the old one. It is absolutely caked with all kinds of particles on there. So a good thing that's in there. Because I saw that in there, I'm like, what is that? So it makes sense. I didn't realize it was just like a loose magnet like that. The other thing to note here is there's seals like around every single bolt hole. There's like a piston that goes in this hole, and I'll show you how that's set up when I'm putting it back together. But essentially what I did is I've got everything in the vise, and I just peeled the reservoir away from the pump. So this one just is going to slide on basically here like this. So I'll get that situated. We'll get that refitted, make sure all the gaskets are in place. Okay, the better way to do this is I actually put this down into the vise so all my seals actually stay in place when I put the reservoir back on. Because like I said, there's a seal around each bolt hole, and you got the seal here at the bottom. So you gotta make sure all those stay in place when you drop your reservoir on. Okay, reservoir is lined up with the pump. This bolt has to go back in. That was on the original pump, so that's going to go back in there. So we got a spring, there's a piston, and this is your connection point here where your flare nut goes into for the hose, and there's a seal here also. So you're going to take your spring, that drops in there first. That drops back in there. And then when you put this on, you got to put a little bit of pressure to thread that back in. And then once all that's tightened back up, everything should be sealed back up, and we're going to attempt to put this back in the car. Unit is all pressed back together. Pump is back into the reservoir. Okay, brackets are all set, mounted to the engine brackets. I left it loose, so obviously we can adjust for the belt tension. And we're gonna go ahead and get our high pressure and low pressure lines put back on. Okay, that's about a half a quart. I'll start there. Let's see where we are on the level. Yeah, it's just barely showing on the stick. We'll get some more in there. Fluid level actually looks good, right on the mark. Okay, everything seems to be great. I looked at the measurement on the fluid level, and it looks right on the mark. There's a cold and a hot mark, and it was just above the cold mark.